Hello and welcome to today's review, the Henkei Deluxe Class Ironhide. General thoughts on this guy: the bot mode is pretty good, looks like the character. I'm loving the decked out paint details on these headlights. The chrome weapon is quite cool, something that Henkei and the Japanese Transformers Classics line did. There's some paint throughout the vehicle, these fires are painted. There's the yellow stripes, kind of segmented across the legs. For the robot mode, you can't really see a ton of the paint, but this inside section on the windscreen, this is painted too. Funny thing that this figure does now, G1 Ironhide, the front of the vehicle was the chest, so the windscreen became this front section. On this toy, it's actually the back end of the vehicle that becomes the chest, but it gives the same kind of look, it's the other half of the vehicle, but you get the same windscreen chest, and it's quite cool. There's also a really cool gimmick that I'd like to show you quick. So if we pull this bumper down from in here, the insert folds away, and if we push it back up, it reappears, which is some really cool engineering. I don't know how much that affects something like the budget on an old figure like this, but it's Takara. Back then, this came out in like 2008. They were working magic, alright? They were truly doing what Hasbro could not. Even if Hasbro's output for the time was quite good, I genuinely think this is leagues above the Hasbro Universe Ironhide. And that's the same toy, but it's just different colors, it's a different shade of red. And just a lot less paint applications. Whereas this, he's got a painted white face. Now, if I had to start griping about the vehicle, about the robot mode, it's really that kind of this section here where the head sits on, it doesn't come up, It doesn't come up fully, so the head's always looking a bit down. But it still looks like Ironhide. Now, for the weapon, as you can see, I'll put the hand backwards. Now, I've realised that this weapon does connect better when the hand is flipped around. If we turn it around and try to connect the weapon, it doesn't seem to want to sit as well. So there's my reasoning for that. And for this weapon, on one side you've got the Gatling gun, but on the other side you've got a blade. Now I think the blade is more relevant for the ratchet version of this mod, which I will be reviewing soon, because I do have the Hasbro version of this ratchet. And it's quite cool, Blade comes out quite nicely. It's a cool little slidey, springy mechanism thing in there. So yeah, I'm quite cool with how the weapon works. Now, something to point out is what this figure does better than the Studio Series 86, which is kind of the de facto Ironhide nowadays. This figure doesn't have a bajillion shades of red throughout it. The 86 has this horrible color matching, I'll show it on screen, and the vehicle mode ends up being 3 or 4 shades of red plastic, and the robot mode is not safe from that either. There ends up being different shades of molded plastic, different shades of painted plastic, and it all comes together horribly. I really wish I could, well, I kind of don't. I wish I could show you it to some degree in person, but at the same time, I do not want the 86 figure. The robot mode is this blocky, chunky mess. It's not the animation model, but it does still kind of look like G1 Ironhide, so I'm not gonna dunk on it too much. This, on the other hand, does look like G1 Ironhide, but a slightly modernized version of the design. Only other gripes with this mode, before I move on to size comparisons and articulation, are that he's got these hollow sections in the calf, which is it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does exist. It is something to point out. And all the screws being visible along the front of the arm. Now, would I want to see all of this back section? No, not really. But I'm sure screw covers couldn't have been too expensive. Oh well, potentially if I found something small enough, it's a problem I could fix, but I'm not willing to go that far with this. I think this figure's just fine as is. But final gripe, this backpack, it's not the best thing in the world. This front section with the grill and the road thing that I do not remember the name of. Anyway, it doesn't like tab in anywhere, so it kind of just hangs here, and this can get a bit loose if you move them around too much, but oh well. So that's a general look at the figure as a whole. Now we're going to be moving on to articulation.
Articulation.
So, articulation on this guy is as follows. Shoulders go all the way around. We're on this kind of a little mushroom peg kind of thing. It's not quite mushroom, it's, I don't know, it's a weird joint. I don't see other figures with it, even from the time period or newer. Anyway, it goes all the way around. Now, during transformation, these are prone to untabbing, but we'll cross that road when we get there. So it goes all the way up. The arm can pull outwards like so, but the shoulder section does not move. He has a forward butterfly joint. He has a backwards butterfly joint, which is really nice in motion. There you go, beautiful stuff. He has a swivel just below the elbow. He has elbows that can't pull a 90. It sucks, but oh well. He has wrist swivels. As you can see, the arm came off. That sucks with some of the joints being tighter than others. But anyway, the hand goes all the way around. The hand can hinge inwards. As you can see, it's pinned right here. There you go. Cool stuff. Same on both arms. Then he has a waist weirdly situated here. So there you go. Something to point out. Or is it? No, sorry. It's further up here. There you go. So the waist is really high up, but the whole assembly moves quite nicely. The head cannot do a full 360 degrees due to the back panel. There you go. He does look kind of soulless as well if we're pointing stuff out. Let's look at the light piping quick while I remember. It's not the best thing in the world. As you can see, his eyes aren't really glowing. Oh well. Back to articulation. Legs kick up that much. There you go. Legs can kick backwards considerably less. Swivel just below the thigh. This part of the leg does move upwards. As you can see, it's screwed in. Knee goes a bit backwards. There's nothing below that point. The legs can kick out at the hip. And then finally, we get to the feet. He does have ankle rockers. There you go. And the pivots quite far inwards. Does fold all the way up for a toe bend, if that's what you're calling a toe bend. But yeah, quite cool. Really nice to see ankle rockers and butterfly joints on a old figure like so. I like this at least. Yeah, I'm generally quite happy with the articulation for his age. That's something you've always got to consider. Like, how does it move compared to everything it came out with, you know? And given the fact this is a 2008 Deluxe figure, I'm more than happy with the articulation. It's definitely something to praise. So now we're going to be moving on to the size comparisons.
Size comparison bot mode.
So, size comparisons for Ironhide. Here we have Ralph, Universe, Brawn, Trailcutter, Dave. Now, generally, I'm quite happy with this, you know. Minifigures, I think they look very good with Transformers regardless. This Universe Brawn, this is from the same toy line, but the difference here is this is the size class up from Brawn. So there you go. I wish this was the Takara version of Brawn, that way you could see the better paint deco and you could really talk about how Takara is doing a better job, but oh well. Same with this Trailcutter. This came out about 2 years later. It's the Hasbro version again, but it's still decently painted. Yeah, nothing too much to say here. Scales nicely with Legends. I mean, in actual practice with scale and whatnot, this is the size all of the mini bots were back when this was what Chug scale was doing. So, you know, they don't look too bad together, but I do think all of the mini bots being Legends class instead of smaller deluxes like nowadays did kind of hurt the scale a little bit. But at least they were smaller, and all of the other characters were mostly as big as they needed to be. So yeah, something to point out. And moving on from here, we're going straight into the transformation.
Transformation. Size comparison, vehicle mode.
And so for the vehicle mode, we have this lovely red SUV. It's quite cool. You know, in G1, Ironhide turned into what I believe was a camper van, and you know, I'm not too opposed to that idea, but I really do like kind of the general look this is going for. Sure, you can complain it's a bit gappy, but you know, I've dealt with gappy transformers before. This ain't no problem. Only real gripe with this is, sure, it's a bit panelly, you know. The transformation doesn't allow for the kind of smoothest looking vehicle in the world, but I've kind of learned to accept it. Because I looked at the Studio Series 86 rig and I thought, man, I don't need it, you know. Sure, it's got probably a more posable robot mode, possibly. But this just does everything for me. It's got the yellow stripe, right? Now, if you get everything beautifully lined up, which it can be a bit difficult sometimes, it still looks better than the SS86 without the stripe, you know? It's just one of those things that I never understood. I don't know why the SS86 isn't accurate. There you go, weapon falls out. Anyway, moving on to the vehicle mode size comparisons. Ralph, Trailcar, Steve, Legends Brawn, Legacy United Chase. Nice little kind of look. See, they're about the same length, both deluxes, different time periods, of course. But you know, I'm cool with this. I'd even be happier if Ironhide was a little bit bigger or Chase was a little bit smaller, you know, something like that. It's not too big of a deal for me. And yeah, overall, I really don't have much to critique with the vehicle mode. And I did mention at the start about everything being one shade of plastic or paint or whatever, you know, everything being uniform. There is the slightest difference between this paint here and this plastic here, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. And in this little hinge section where the head sits underneath here, this is a darker shade of plastic, but it's on top of the vehicle. And looking at it from the side, or any other angle for that matter, you don't really see too much of a difference anyway. So I'm kind of indifferent to it. And I love the clear plastic windows. This is something I'll always prefer on Transformers. People that go, oh yeah, you need opaque plastic windows or painted windows like these. No, thank you. I much prefer the realism of having clear windows. No, it's on the back as well. Tail lights are painted. License plate doesn't have anything on. But yeah, generally lovely stuff. Even got a little space for the sunroof. So we're going to be moving on to my final thoughts.
Final thoughts and ranking.
So for my final thoughts on Henkei Ironhide, I want to keep this as kind of short and sweet as possible without going over too much ground that I've already covered. But I do feel some things are necessary to point out. So for aesthetics, we're going to give them a 3.5 out of 5. I did originally want to score him at least a 4, because it generally does feel like Ironhide, and it looks the part in both modes for a modernized version of this design. But the main problem with this is kind of little tiny gripes. You know, you've got these screws present along both arms, you've got these gaps in the legs, you've got the backpack. I'm not normally one to complain about backpacks, but here you go, it's not the most pretty thing in here. And then for the vehicle mode on the aesthetics part, you know, it's just a bit, yeah, you know, I rarely like the vehicle mode, and I do not hate the way you get to the vehicle mode, but it is panelly. That's kind of just a problem with that. And then final gripe with this robot mode is the fact that the head doesn't sit flush, you know. This panel won't come up fully. That's not a me problem. It's just how this mold works. It's a complaint people have had for many years between this or Ratchet. And yeah, just aesthetics, I'm giving it a 3.5 because it looks and feels like the character, but there are small things holding it back. Transformation in this guy, I'm actually going to give a 3 out of 5. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not amazing. I do think it's nowhere near as bad as people complain and make it out to be, but yeah, it's generally okay getting from point A to point B. The only issue with mine is these kind of these arms detaching, as you can see. The joint isn't the best in the world, but whatever. I'm quite okay with doing this back and forth. And yeah, I have no worries about it breaking either, which is something to point out. Now, articulation on this guy, I'm definitely giving him a 5. For a figure of this time period, he moves great. All of these joints are actually pretty superb, and the butterfly joints and ankle rockers are quite something for a figure so old. Even something like Voyager class Optimus Prime from Classics, which came out a couple years prior to this, that is the poster child Prime that you would display with your Universe collection. Sadly, it doesn't move anywhere near as good as this, even though I love that figure. Ironhide just poses way better, even with the weird joints across the arms and slight inconsistencies with the legs. You know, it moves so well for a deluxe. That's what, 17 years old now. So yeah, I'm giving it a 5 on articulation. And then finally, value for money on this guy. That's a bit of a hard sell, considering this is Takara's Henkei version, which as with most Henkei figures, at least nowadays, they're not the cheapest thing in the world, considering they're superior to the Hasbro versions in almost every way, unless you don't like chrome weapons. But for Ironhide, it's the general figure that benefits the most from the new paint job. And yeah, I'm gonna really give the 3 out of 5 because it's solid. You know, if you can get this for about £25, go ahead. If you can't find one loose for that cheap, I don't know, you know, because I remember not paying an awful lot of money for this. I think it was about 20 that I paid, and I'm very happy with that. I'm still looking for Henkei Ratchet. For the time being, I've got Hasbro's one, which is this mold in a whole new color scheme. But it's something to work on, you know. And the Hasbro version, just dodge that mold. Like with that paint job, it looks terrible. Entirely different shades of red. No yellow stripe. Face on the other one is painted blue. The weapon's not chromed out. This I quite like. Just if you want this version, only buy the Japanese one. If you want this mold, only buy the Japanese one, and kind of leave it at that. You know, that's why I'm giving it a 5, because I can only recommend this release. I can't recommend the other one. So yeah, go for it. If you want an Ironhide and you're okay with this from the review I've given, sure, track it down. There's plenty of ways. You know, whether it's collectors groups or whatnot, considering he's older. Or just say no, search around online. But yeah.
This has been AnimatedCHUG. Thank you for watching. Ironhide out.